Not everyone realizes the sacrifices our military men and women make to serve their country, but even fewer think about the sacrifices made by military families. Stay with us as we talk with military families and learn how they serve too. Thanks for tuning in to Veterans Voices. I'm Nathan Johnson. Veterans Voices is a monthly television show that explores important issues that affect the veterans community. We encourage you to participate in the conversation tonight. We want to hear from you. If you would like to ask a question, call us at 925-313-1170 or send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email us veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. We would love to hear from you.
This evening on Veterans Voices, we'll examine how service affects the lives of the entire family. Our guests are all spouses of active military, and I want to welcome Amy Schick, Ingrid Herrera Yee, Jennifer Pascual, Anna Richardson, and Jorge Morales to the show. Welcome to our panel. We are so excited to have you all here tonight. We apologize right now because our FB Live has not been working properly, but the show must go on, and we are excited to talk military families. So Amy, I'd love to start with you. We got a chance to chit chat with all of you prior to the show launching, and I thought it would be great to kick off this segment just talking about your connection to the military and military family life.
Sure. So I've been married to my soldier for almost 27 years. We got married just shortly after I graduated high school. And it's been kind of a wild ride ever since then. He was enlisted in the Marine Corps at the time, and then we both were in college together. And then after 9/11, he decided that military service was his calling. So we left our jobs in San Francisco, and with a toddler and a baby, we started this Army life journey. Since then, it's kind of been a crazy, wild ride. We've moved several times. Our kids are now teenagers. Yeah, so in the early years, when there were a lot of combat deployments, we were on this cycle of move, train, deploy, move, train, deploy, and we just did that, but we did it at new locations every couple of years. So,
anybody else in the panel that can relate to that type of cyclical military lifestyle? I see you're shaking your head, Jennifer. What do you have for us?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely been our experience as well. I think, if you've been around a long time, then you've been part of those early years, at least of early years of our time where there was just a lot of training and a lot of deployments. And if you weren't doing one, you were doing the other. And there wasn't really just a lot of time to kind of exist as a family. So we've definitely been down that road as well. My husband and I have been married about almost 15 years. We have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And together we've been through 6 deployments, and we're getting ready to do our 9th move. So it's been a busy, really busy 15 years. A lot of great and a lot of hard, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Anna, you mentioned before the show started, you just relocated to a new duty station with your service member. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you're at, but also I just would wonder, as a family member, do you feel like you get a choice or have any say in regards to these deployments and duty stations? Does the military ask you where you want to go next?
That's a hard no. So yeah, we being part of the Special Forces community, we actually don't have changes in our duty station as often. There are a lot of trainings and there are a lot of deployments, but in terms of where we're located for our family, it doesn't happen often. So it was a big life change to move away from, we were previously at Fort Campbell in total for about 10 years. And so it's really stepping away from that life that I'd been living, the friendships that I built. And then we got here about 7 days ago to Tampa in Florida. Also different lifestyle here, one that I'm very much looking forward to, but my husband had some say he volunteered for a change. And then they're presented with a list of options. And if you're fast enough on the draw, then you'll get the option that you choose. But it's really my job to support that versus factor into where we get to go.
Yeah. And Jorge, I believe you're part of a military family. Your spouse is in the Marine Corps, but you have some children, some young children. And we have a question from one of our viewers. And so maybe you could start us off with a little bit about your experience, but also, add to that in regards to your children and having them adapt to new schools and adjust their friend circle and such.
So my children are 6 and 5. In a way, they're kind of lucky because they still don't get the whole long-term relationships with as older kids or teenagers where they have more personal friends. But we definitely do see that they're constantly asking where we're going to go to their house and where they're going to come visit. And luckily there's Zoom and phone calls, or for their birthdays we might call them, but they still miss them. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to answer that because, like I said, they haven't had any drastic changes. We were in California for 5 years. That's pretty much where they grew up. And now we're here somewhere new. I mean, they do say that they want to go back to California, and I think it's because of the beach, and we're in Virginia now. And I can't blame them, but I mean, they're just going to have to get used to it like I did. And but I mean, the one thing they did complain about was their daycares, even in California. It's kind of difficult to be one active duty with a spouse who isn't active duty. There's a priority list that daycares go to, and we fall at the bottom of the totem pole. I think we waited about 5 years on the list, and we never even made it the whole entire time that we were in California because I wasn't active duty and she was. So we did have to change daycares about 4 or 5 times the entire time we were there. I guess I can relate to that as school since they were small, because the daycares we had were just military spouses who would actually have to move as well. And then finding somebody you trust, then but that's how it went for me. I don't know how it is for older children to, acclimate to new surroundings.
Daycare is the first thing that I secure when it comes to a change in where you're going to live. It's so important, and you have to be on top of it in case there is a wait list. That is the first thing that I will secure, especially as a working parent, to make sure that the disruption is low.
And when you say wait list, Anna, are you talking about like an on-base resource wait list, or is this on-base military provided daycare that you have to compete with, or are you just talking about anything out in the community, or both?
So I've not personally used on-post daycare, but yes, in terms of on-post daycare, there is a hierarchy. And if you have 2 active duty service members as parents, you're going to get that spot more so than somebody who has 1 active duty and 1 non-service member parent. But even in the communities coming from where we lived in Clarksville, in Tennessee, there are only so many very good daycares, and everybody knows where they are. And so, especially with COVID happening, the numbers were dwindling, and they had 1 to 2 year wait lists just for a community resource.
So we haven't heard from Ingrid yet, so we definitely want to bring you into the conversation because you absolutely, just like everyone else on the panel, have a very strong connection to military family life as well. So we want to hear about you as well. And if you're able to speak on this topic too, go ahead and expound on that if you'd like to.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, I'm a military spouse of almost 16 years. My husband's Army, and we have 3 children. And yes, the childcare, the schools, changing schools, we've moved 7 times in the past almost 16 years that we've been together. And our children are special needs. So 2 of them are on the autism spectrum, which added a whole other layer to trying to find the appropriate childcare. So whatever lists are out there, we were close to the bottom, because it's hard to find providers that would be able to really support special needs kids. And in the community, it was difficult because they knew your military family, you're not going to invest in their childcare for as long as maybe they would like you to. And so that pulls you further down the list as well. And, I work, my husband, active duty, I work, it makes it, doubly difficult. And the transitions for the children are really hard. Special needs are not moving every couple of years on average, makes it really difficult for our kids to adapt. But, on the plus side, they also, they become very resilient. And, they are so quick to make friends because they're always the new kid. So, so for my boys, they become the class clowns or, the little ambassadors for the teacher because, they have to learn how to make friends quickly, so that, for me, for my boys, that was really their reality. So, yeah. And so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for the kids, a challenge for us as parents. But you take the blessings along with the challenges.
Absolutely. You guys are actually speaking my language right now. So a lot of the people out there may not know, but I've been in the Air Force since birth. I grew up as a military child, and then I married into the life, and then I joined the life for myself. So as you guys are talking, it's just very reminiscent for me being the new kid, because we moved several times too during my childhood. And I actually spent a chunk of my childhood overseas. So that was even a really interesting experience because culturally, I didn't even know what being an American was for at least 8 years of my life, because I was experiencing a whole different culture and learning American life outside of the United States. And so you bring that layer in back to the States, and you're adjusting to your extended family because you're not really growing up with them. And I know we kind of joked earlier about what we consider home. When you're in a military family, you tend to make homes everywhere you're stationed at. Your community, your military family becomes a very large part of your family. So I'd love to hear anybody's insight on that piece of military family life.
We've moved around quite a bit. And I think the hardest thing for our kids has been the education piece, because it's like an accordion effect. They may move to one school and they're a year behind. And then, 2 years later, they're moving to another school and they're repeating everything that they did at the last school. And so that part has been difficult, and we've gotten creative and we've made our way through it. I must say, since we've been in this life for our kids' entire lives, is that with moving so much, we do reconnect with old friends that we've had at old duty stations. And so that for the kids has been really amazing, that, friends that they had in Alaska are now here at JBLM, and, friends that they had in Tampa or, at Fort Bragg, and vice versa. So I feel like that kind of gives them a sense of comfort that no matter where they go, there's going to be someone, that is going to be there, that's going to be part of our Army family. And our children, and I don't know if this is true for everyone else, so you'll have to share your experiences, but our kids have a whole gamut of military aunties and uncles that are like, they're Army aunties and Army uncles. And so they feel like real aunts and uncles. And I think that helps with this life of, the nomadic life, I should say. I don't know about anybody else, but
yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention, Erin, was just, I think it's also like in our family, our kids are very different. They've gone through the same military experience, but they as individuals are different. So how it affects them is very different. So as a parent, it's really, trying to figure out how to meet each individual child where they are and figure out what is it they need to be comfortable with the transition. What is it they need to be comfortable in their new school, because it's not, like any kid, right? It's not a one size fits all. So it's, with every move, it's just constantly reinventing that process, understanding who they are then, and how you really help them transition best and be the most comfortable. So
I think that's perfectly stated, Jennifer, the individuality of it, and how a common phrase, you signed up for this, you should, you can't complain about it, but we all sign up for many things in life. You sign up for school, but you don't exactly know what it's going to look like. And we could both go to the same school and have very different experiences. So yes, we entered into these military marriages, but they don't look the same. And we don't walk the same journey. One of the underlying factors that we have in common is that we're in the military lifestyle. So we can always come back to that, but just understanding that we're all walking different paths. And so we can each learn from each other, but there's no one size fits all answer on how to navigate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to add to that with the not one size fits all. I want to explain to you how it was for me. I kind of stood out being one of the only male spouses, So, and then not only that, but my kids didn't go to school to make friends. So I had to, they were small. I had to go to the park, and it's just being the only male in a female group. You just can't approach it. It's not the same, it's not, I guess, not culturally acceptable to for me to walk into another home while the husband's at work with my kids. It just, as friendly as it may be, it just might not look right. So even for my kids, it affected their state of mind that, why don't we go play with them? Well, we can't. And I would make up excuses. And it would get hard personally too, mentally. I need some adult communication when my wife would be away, and it was just not there. Luckily, I was also, I'm a veteran, so I knew how things worked, and it made it a little easier to understand. So I had that, but otherwise, I was alone with the kids most of the time, sometimes the neighbors, and, hopefully the husbands came from work and I could talk to them, and then the kids could come over, but then it's dinner time and sleep time. So it was just a cycle trying to, get into groups, and even the programs that family, I guess, that they would offer for families. I know they try their best, but it's like a business. You're going to cater to your bigger population, and a lot of it were women. So there were a lot of things that I just wasn't, I guess, cut out for. But yeah, that's what I experienced because my kids were not in school, so their friendships were a little more difficult, I guess. And I'm not sure how that was for you guys, but at least for me, it was hard.
I'm really glad you shared that,
Jorge.
Jorge.
Here. Yeah. I'm sorry, Nathan. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just thinking though, as I'm hearing this, it sounds like a lot of your network is what exists on base though. When I'm hearing, I think it was Amy say, there's a lot of cousins and a lot of aunts and uncles and such. And when Jorge's saying like who my friends are, or the spouses, it doesn't sound like when you're in these experiences as a military spouse that your world even expands outside of that military community or outside of that base. You're not going outside the base to connect with other families or with others. Is that because the military is such a tight group and is so much more relatable? Or do you feel like there's just not a lot of time when you're at a different duty station to maybe expand beyond those limits?
I think there's instant connection and understanding with somebody who is, again, not walking the exact same path, but a pretty similar one, especially if I know with my husband, he's generally on a team of a certain number of, for his job, it is all men. And so the spouses, we usually go through the same process at the same time. Your spouse is deployed at the same time, your spouse returns at the same time, and they're deployed to the same place. So we're going through pretty similar experiences. So we're able to really, you need somebody, I need somebody, here we are for one another. And especially when you have kids in the mix, none of us want to be left to have to think of how to entertain our kids every single day. So if you can have those play groups, those opportunities, they really are life-saving. It's just it's an instant commonality.
Well, we've gotten this conversation started. In fact, we actually ran a little bit over the first segment, but that's fantastic because I love the crosstalk. I love the way that you guys are sharing openly about your experiences. And we'll give our audience more of a chance here in a moment. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with our panel. Now we want to honor the late Corporal Gary Estrella in this month's Shadowbox segment.
Tonight, we have a very special shadow box. Gary George Estrella served as a corporal in the U.S. Marine Corps. One of his proudest achievements was earning the American Spirit Honor Medal as the top recruit in his Marine training company. He saw combat in Vietnam with the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines near the DMZ and received a Purple Heart. After his service, he earned an MBA and had a successful civilian career. Gary was very active in the veteran community. He was a member and officer in the Marine Corps League, Vietnam Veterans of Diablo Valley, American Legion, VFW, DAV, and the Military Order of the Purple Heart. We honor his service and dedicate this show to his memory.
Gary Estrella gave so much to the veterans community of Contra Costa. He was a friend of the show and will be missed. We're talking right now with family members of active servicemen and women. Want to be part of our conversation? Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1. Email veteransvoices@contracostatv.org or call us at 925-313-1170. Our phones are open right now. I would like to ask a special favor for those of you watching us in Contra Costa County. Please take down this phone number. Leave us a message after the show. Tell us what you like about the show or even what you think could be better. We would love to know who's watching and how we can better serve our local veterans community. I want to welcome back our panelists. They are husbands, they are wives of active duty service members, they're fathers, they're mothers. We got into a really good conversation. And I want us to talk about some of the specific challenges that you've faced. One of the challenges I see is that someone who serves in the military, they get a uniform, they get formal training before they go do their job. And it doesn't seem like military spouses get any kind of formal training. You don't get to wake up in the morning and put on a uniform. How difficult is it when you need to reach out to someone and let them know exactly your situation or what kind of help you need? How difficult is it for them to really recognize how significant your role is as a military spouse? Jorge, I want to come back to you.
For me, it wasn't too much on, how to take care of my children or, how to do the dishes. I grew up doing these things, but my mother taught me, luckily. But it was more of a mental game, just knowing that I didn't have that backup or that stress relief if I needed. It was always me. Anything happened, it was me. And then at the same time, trying to make something out of your life. You don't want to just, at least for myself, I don't want to just be there. I want to have a purpose. I want to go to school. I wanted to work. So putting all that together, I guess it was the hardest part. And I don't know really how to explain it. It's a mental thing, because it's not that you can't do it. And I've lost friends too, where it goes around where, oh, my job's harder than being a stay-at-home dad. And I've gone to places and other men who are like, oh, my job's harder. You're a stay-at-home. It's easy. And here I am, the only man in the party saying, I can argue that I've done it. And I've got to say, this is the hardest thing I've done. It wears you down and mentally, physically. And there's times where I didn't even have the energy to shower that night. And I just wanted to go to sleep. But you can't just go to sleep. So that was it for me. The mental part of it, especially because we didn't have family around. And like I said, I couldn't make friends or have somebody to really call. All my friends were in the military and they were in other bases and they were active duty. So.
Ingrid, I saw your head shaking quite a bit. It sounds like you might be able to relate or can understand exactly where Jorge is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about the challenges early on, and they continued for years. When I met my husband, I had just graduated with my PhD in clinical psychology. So I had all these big dreams about, having my own practice and having pretty stable, life in the Boston area. But then, met him and, decided, wow, that this is the life for me. I'm going to, follow him around and, this is the love of my life. So, what do I do with my career? You need a license in my career to see patients, to continue the work. And, this was back 15, 16 years ago. There was no support for licensure for military spouses. There was no attention to military spouse employment. So here I was with a PhD and, pretty much trying to find a job at the mall or trying to find, whatever secretarial work I could find, just anything to help. We're an enlisted family, so anything to help make ends meet. And, that was really hard because something that I had spent, 12 years of my life going to school for now was unusable at the time. So, that was a big struggle and a difficulty. And I felt really isolated because I didn't know other military spouses. I have a lot of military spouse friends. And then I had friends who I graduated with who were in the field, but they weren't in the military life. So none of those things intersected. And I felt really alone. And, didn't know what to do, just knew that, okay, my husband, my family, this is my priority, so I'll make it work. But making it work for years, it was hard, and, I was stuck in my head, like Jorge was saying, it's, you feel emotionally like, who do I talk to? Where do I turn? What do I do? Because back then, like a lot of spouses, I thought if I talk about these things, it's going to affect my service member's career. I really believed that back then. I know that now that no, it does not affect your service member's career to get help or to talk to someone or to look for resources. But back then, as a young spouse, that was my fear. And, so it was very, very isolating and, difficult.
I know, Jennifer, you were also kind of nodding your head there too. And you guys, again, have just kind of also triggered something in me because I experienced that as a military spouse as well, the isolation and just maybe losing a little bit of your identity as you're in that spouse role and just kind of losing a part of you. Jennifer, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the spouse circles, we talk, and certainly it's been true for me as well, where there's been multiple periods where I sort of feel like I'm reinventing, right? So every time we move, there's a new pivot and there's kind of a new invention of me that happens at that next duty station. For some of the years I've worked and for some of the years I haven't, and we were overseas and it was more difficult. And so then it's, if part of your identity is connected to perhaps your profession or what you're doing outside of military life or outside of parenting, but then you can't do those things, it does create a challenge to just sort of stay connected to who you are and make sure there's something about you that is beyond being a military spouse and beyond being a parent and even beyond being a spouse, that just you as an individual have your own identity. And sometimes I think it can feel like that's hard to carve. I think Ingrid is spot on. I think the culture is shifting in that, we've been around 15 years. And when we first started, you didn't talk about what was hard and you didn't talk about, the challenges because you knew what you signed up for. And because, there was all that fear that it would have an impact. And I think we've learned that doesn't serve anyone to sort of hide behind, those realities. We need to get out in front of them and talk about them. And so I love that things are shifting, but it takes time. That was my 2 cents.
We just have
We've got
2
about
minutes.
a minute left of this segment too. Nathan, I think I beat you to the punch this time.
Go for it. This is such an exciting topic. We're just both wanting to jump right in there.
It is. It's such great conversation. And just before we wrap up this, got like about a minute. Amy, if you had any thoughts you wanted to share there as well.
Sure. With moving so often with so many, like so many families do, something that I think most people don't realize is that a lot of the move falls on the shoulders of the military spouse, because our husbands or, whether there's, husbands or wives that are serving and that they're the service member, they're still working. So when it comes to finding new schools and finding a home and arranging for movers and getting ready for movers, or if you have to do it yourself, so much of that falls on the shoulders of the spouse. So when you're working and you have kids that are in school and sports, it is a stressor that a lot of us feel. And sometimes our service members aren't even there when we're moving. Sometimes we're packing up the house all by ourselves because our service members deployed or they had to go to their job early. And some of us are traveling across the US by ourselves with kids at times as well. So I think that's something that people don't really see or really recognize, that a lot of these moves, and then I think that also, at least for me, really compounds when you're working as well, because there were times that, we were working and I'm packing up a house and then I'm, going to Portland for a convention and then I'm coming back and there's movers inside the house. And so, it gets very chaotic, and sometimes doing that thing that's for us and for our careers and our professional development, sometimes it almost has to take a back seat because it's so exhausting. You just simply can't do it all and do it all well. So it is one of those things that there are, I don't want to call them sacrifices, there's compromises. And there's a season for everything. So that part, we have to pick our season.
Thank you for sharing. Totally, definitely can relate to that. And when we return, we'll conclude with our panel of military family members. And right now, we want to take a look at a lighter side of military news with this month's Scuttlebutt.
Good evening. I'm your host, Corporal Smuckatelli. Welcome to a new segment of Scuttlebutt. Today, we got a doozy for you. Technology. We use it every day, every which way. Military is no different. In fact, the military spends a whopping, holy Jesus, that's a lot of money. That is how much the military spends on research and development, on equipment that we will never see the light of day of. In fact, the Air Force just rolled out their new Skyborg autonomous drone prototype. This is Skynet. This is Skynet, isn't it? I'm getting huge Skynet vibes from this thing. As it took to the skies last week, the sounds of Highway to the Danger Zone can be faintly heard as it flies over, ushering in a new era of autonomous warfare. Basically, it's a Predator drone on steroids. So if we compare the Skyborg autonomous drone prototype to a newly christened United States Marine, you tell me which is the better purchase. Well, I mean, what's the one thing it can do that, Marines can't do? Oh, it can fly? Oh. Well, don't worry, we got jetpacks! Yeah. You think I'm making a joke? I'm really not making a joke. I legitimately mean jetpacks. Yeah. This is not a joke, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, the future. The Royal Marines now have a jetpack that can reach up to about 80 miles per hour and climb up to about 12,000 feet. Suck it, Army. Listen, if the British can do it, so can we. But, we know how the U.S. military goes. It loves just blowing its budget on just stupid robots. Trying to be frickin' Star Wars over here. Instead of cool Thunderbirds or Go crap. I'm mad. I joined the military at the wrong time. They got jetpacks now. Come on, man. What the hell? I had to hump it out butt crumpet, and these flying over? New generation of people coming through. God, I'm sounding like a boomer. These kids, they don't know what it's like in my military. Seriously. Nathan, can we get a jetpack, man? I want a jetpack. Can we get a jetpack? You got this awesome bunker for me, keeping me safe from all the baddies. Can I get a jetpack? No? Can't get one? It's not in the budget? What are we blowing the budget on? We're not blowing it on the set. This is a blue sheet. I got a blue sheet behind me. What are we doing? What? Look at this lighting. What are we doing, man? What are you blowing the budget on? Oh, I know what we're blowing the budget on. Gunny Google, baby. Woo! You ever wanna feel like you're back in boot camp? Gunny Google, baby. Yeah, Gunny Google will answer. It's just like Siri, baby. You ask any question to it, it'll give you appropriate response. Hey, Gunny Google. What is your favorite movie?
Lawrence, what, of Arabia?
That's a good choice. Hey, Gunny Google. What is your favorite state?
Texas.
Top-notch technology right here, boys. Gunny, how expensive is the Skyborg autonomous drone prototype?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What have we got here? A f***ing comedian. Do you think I'm cute? Do you think I'm funny? Then wipe that disgusting grin off your face.
What?
You had best yourself. Let me see your war face.
My war face? What? My war face?
Now let me see your war face. Bullshit, you didn't convince me. Let me see your real war face. Now get up. Get on your feet.
Help! Hold down up front. You're running away.
Oh goodness, I absolutely need to switch branches. I need a jetpack immediately.
I think Corporal Schmuckatelli needs the VA's help immediately. We need to get him to the vet center. That poor guy down in that bunker. We need to find somewhere better for him.
But first, me jetpack.
Yeah. We got the budget for it.
My goodness. We're talking with military family members of active military service members, and we want to welcome you to contact us with your questions. Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email at veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. Or you can give us a call at 925-313-1170. Again, we'd like to ask a special favor for those of you watching us in the Contra Costa County. If you can please take down the phone number that I just said and leave us a message after the show. Tell us what you like about the show or even what you think could be better. We would love to know who's watching and how we can better service our local veteran community. So welcome back to our panel. We are having such great discussion about your life as military spouses and just enduring this life. We've brought up so many different interesting points and challenges and transitions with the kids and all kinds of great things to talk about with careers and just having to balance all of that as you are also supporting your service members. So I would like to kind of throw out a question just from my own experience as well, because I was fortunate enough, like I said, growing up in the life, when I married a service member, it definitely wasn't anything foreign. I was used to the moving around. I was totally used to, the coming and going and actually having to establish a routine in our home. I watched my mom do that with us. There were 6 kids in my family and my father was a flyer. So he was gone a lot on the aircraft, out on missions. So my mom had a routine with us from chores to schoolwork to all those different things. And so just kind of curious for you all, if you didn't have a military background when you did marry your service member, how did you kind of embrace the life and start that routine of living the lifestyle?
I was in the military, so I can't answer that one.
I'm sorry, who was that spoke?
Anna, I was in the military, so I can't answer that one.
You can absolutely answer because you have that background. So how was your transition from being in the military to now being the spouse?
So I probably got the experience that is one of my most unfavorite, which is the term dependent. I strongly dislike being referred to as only a dependent because, as we've discussed here, most of the things outside of our spouse's job lands on our shoulders. I'm very fortunate my spouse is very involved in the things that we have to do for our family, but there are a lot of restrictions on even a form that you're permitted to fill out, places that you're permitted to go. I know I had to get special powers of attorney, to sell a house that was under my name. And I understand the legality of it, but it is for such an empowered, strong, educated group of individuals to have a simple label like that was a little hard for me to swallow. And it's been so long. It's not something that phases me now, but it's something that I always encourage when I come across a more junior spouse. Don't let it roll off your back. It doesn't have to be how you refer to yourself, even if there's memes and jokes about it. You are a qualified, smart person who is capable of leading your life and taking care. If my spouse left in the middle of the night tonight, he would know everything is fine here. And that's a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Funny that you mentioned
I
that
saw
because
Jennifer. Yeah.
every time that I have conversations with people, I know it's gonna come up. It's like, what do? You
Yeah.
know, so it's like, well, first of all, I pay my own bills. I started off that way, and it's like, but yes, my spouse is the active duty one, and I think when I just got out, because I was a veteran just like you, daycare expenses, especially in California, are ridiculous. I was taking jobs just to say I worked, even though I was making literally no money. It was just going all to daycare, but it was just that sense of like, I have a job, I'm not a dependa, which is not a term of endearment. It's just not. Yeah, it was just hard getting that label. And I mean, you joke around, my wife joked around with it, but after a while it does get a little old, and having to explain to everybody that, listen, I don't just depend on them. There's a lot of things that I still do. And I guess people assume that you just stay home and do nothing.
Right. Yeah, it's
But
interesting. The
I've
military
got
just
a
assumes
degree.
that the whole world kind of focuses around the military. It's almost like the old theory that the earth is at the center of the universe, right? As if a military spouse, and Ingrid, you mentioned being a clinical psychologist, there's a whole nother life and a whole nother profession and a whole nother source of revenue or benefits to the family circle beyond just what the military provides. Earlier, I think someone had mentioned that as you get longer into your career, the less resources or less that your circle becomes. And all of you sound like your career at this point, your spouse has been in for more than one enlistment. Can you say a little bit about that? What is it like to spend more time in the military and feel like less is available to you? I would assume maybe it has something to do with maybe the rank or the level of commitment that maybe you have within your family.
From my experience, I feel like because of my husband's rank, a lot is expected of me. We kind of joke in some circles that the Army is the only institution that when they hire a professional, they get a second one for free. Because there are expectations that we are going to be leaders within our community, and we will volunteer within our service members units. And I always have, because I'm an extrovert and I like to meet people and I like to serve my community, and I find a lot of joy in that. But sometimes that expectation puts a lot of pressure on spouses. So you feel like the amount of people that you have that you can actually call on to help gets smaller and smaller. And so because I do have so much experience with this, there is a lot that I don't really need help with because I've kind of done it a lot, right? So it feels normal to me. But there are times where, you just think, gosh, I really would like some help, but you just don't really feel like asking is the appropriate thing to do,
Yeah. Jennifer, you look like you had something to add to that as well.
Oh, I mean, I can totally, I'm with Amy exactly on that. And I think what's happened for me is that I think over the years, I went through this sort of period in the kind of the early teens of my husband's career and our marriage, where I felt like it was sort of my role to be the giver and not necessarily the receiver of support, of help, of assistance. And so when we ran into a difficult time in our lives, it was hard for me to reach back and to ask people to support me because I felt like it was my job to be supporting them. And so I had to just reframe that for myself and had to kind of grow out of that and understand that it's actually valuable for me to say, no, actually, I could use some support too, because there are different seasons and we just happen to be in a hard one. And so I think it does help. The older you get, I think some of it's my age. I think the more I get into my 40s, the less I kind of, care about, the perception, if you will. So I think that's helped me be a little stronger in being honest about where I'm at. But yeah, that was my ad.
So
go ahead, Nathan. I'm sorry.
I just have one last question. I'll be quiet, Aaron. You can have the rest
You're
of it.
fine. You're fine.
I'm just curious, so much time is spent in terms of like career planning in the military, right? Like every 4 years, 5 years, it's always like, where is the future taking you? But Where's the future for you, for all of you? Whether it's under that identity as a military spouse or as an individual, what's the next enlistment look like for you, or the next 4 years look like for you?
I'll start this one off since I just moved out here, so it's kind of fresh. It is a little different because of the COVID situation. I did have to take a back seat and not look for employment because the kids, there's no daycares, there's nothing there. But initially, for me, it's at least my networking. Everything that I worked for in California, the important people to me, and moving up from one day to another was gone. I know nobody here, and depending on the job, I mean, if you work within the military community, it's a lot easier to move and transition. But at least for what I do, it just doesn't happen. You can't find it on a military basis. So I have to take a lower paying job. And having that, the expenses for childcare, even more again, back to the childcare issue. But you got to take your priorities and wait for a time when it's appropriate. So it's hard for me to say when I can do it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm hoping that I can eventually return to some type of normalcy. But for now, I have all my experience in my back pocket, hoping that I can use it eventually again.
For me, after 15 years of being underemployed and unemployed and having gaps, we're looking at the end of my husband's, military career. And so I'm actually looking forward to stability. And I just got a job 3 months ago where I'm finally not really underemployed, actually working in my field for the first time in 15 years. So,
Congratulations.
In any sustained way. So, that's exciting for me. And, no regrets. I know that, I've said that, it was hard and yeah, it's not perfect. And I had my days where I was like, what am I doing? Why, I spent so much time in school and, and you feel like you've given up so much, but then I think about it, I'm like, I didn't. This community has given me so much back. I've been privileged to, work on suicide prevention for our military families and, to work within mental health, even if it wasn't as a clinician, because of the license issues, but I was able to give back and work with my community and, now, finally find myself in a point in my career and my life where, all of those experiences actually were a benefit to my career because I'm a generalist now. I have varied experiences. And if they need communications or marketing or academic or research or clinical experience, I have all of these things and more, So for me, it's like, it was, something that I thought was just such a hardship actually turned out to be such a huge blessing.
So I'm sorry. We have less than a minute left to wrap up. So definitely want to hear one final thought from you, ma'am.
I would just gonna piggyback on Ingrid in that so many things, because you are always reinventing yourself. Things do come full circle, and so much really does contribute to your development. It may not look like it at the time, but it does. It benefits you in some way in the future. You just don't know it yet. But
yes. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful discussion.
It's been great.
We hope you've enjoyed our conversation about the lives and experiences of our military families. And later in the show, we'll show at least a list of resources for military family members. Now we invite you to hear a veteran's voice. And this month, the Veterans Voices correspondent, Stephen Burdchick, talks with Navy veteran Alan Cartwright.
We'd like to thank the staff and volunteers of the USS Hornet, Sea, Air, and Space Museum for allowing us to film on this historic ship. Welcome to A Veteran's Voice. In this segment, we discuss a veteran's background with their military service, as well as their activities after leaving the service. We're filming today on the USS Hornet, an aircraft carrier located in San Francisco Bay. Our guest is Alan Cartwright, a Navy flyer. Welcome, Alan.
It's a privilege.
Can you tell us a little bit about your flying experience in the Navy?
Yes, I got my wings in June of 1965, and I was assigned to an attack squadron based in Lemoore, California. I was to fly the A-4 Skyhawk, which is a light attack airplane, strictly air to ground. We dropped bombs and shot rockets. We deployed on the USS Ticonderoga in October of 1968, and our destination was off the coast of Vietnam. While flying 2 cruises over Vietnam, I made over 200 combat missions and made over 300 carrier landings. 70 of those are at night, which is really quite exciting. Flying in the Navy is quite exciting in combat. You have to avoid being shot at by missiles and anti-aircraft.
Well, 300 landings, that's a pretty impressive number.
Thank you.
We're very fortunate to have a short video clip of Alan's 200th mission, flown from the deck of the USS Ticonderoga. What did you do in civilian life after leaving the Navy?
I left the Navy in September of 1968 and hired on with Western Airlines in March of 1969. If you remember, Western Airlines is the only way to fly. Well, at Western, I flew numerous airplanes in different positions. I started out as a second officer or engineer and went up to co-pilot. In 1978, Delta Airlines bought Western. And at Delta, I moved up into the captain position and ended up flying 75, 767 captain for Delta Airlines.
A pretty impressive civilian career as well. What do you do for hobbies or other things to keep you active?
In high school and in college, I was a pretty good swimmer. In high school, I was All-American both my junior and senior year in different events. And at college, I was All-American in the 200 butterfly at Ohio State University. So once I got out of the military, I decided to go into a program which is called Master Swimming. Master Swimming is for older people to continue competing. You compete against people in your own age group with 5-year breaks. During that period, I got to be pretty darn good and set a few national records. In fact, I'm still competing, and shortly I will turn 80 and looking to move into a new age group.
Well, congratulations on that. It sounds like a pretty impressive activity for a Navy flyer. First in the air, first in the water.
Yes, thank you.
Alan, when did you start giving tours on the Hornet?
I've been a volunteer on the Hornet for approximately 10 years, and it's very enjoyable. As a naval aviator coming aboard ship, you don't get to see much of the ship, and I learned a lot about aircraft carriers. But the most fun part is people. I enjoy people and I enjoy giving tours.
How often do you give tours?
I work on Saturdays and we give tours approximately every hour. And they take approximately an hour, so you keep yourself busy. And as I said, I really enjoy talking with the people.
Well, that's great, and I'm sure they get a lot out of it as well. What's the most unusual question that someone has asked you?
Most unusual questions I get is, I guess this is a very big piece of equipment and people don't quite understand how it's oriented. And they'll ask me, which way do you take off? They don't seem to understand you always take off from the back of the ship to the front of the ship. And that's that direction.
Okay, and into the wind, right?
Into the wind, yes. There's always 30 knots of wind coming over the flight deck for both landings and takeoffs.
Okay. What was the most interesting or unusual person that you've met while giving a tour?
I met a woman on one of my tours who, her father was on the USS Ticonderoga the same time I was. And he was also an A4 pilot, not in our squadron, but in our sister squadron. His name was Mike Astosian, and Mike was killed in combat, and during that mission, he was such a harrowing mission that he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. It was an honor to meet her.
That must have been a very special day for you.
Yes, it was.
Alan, what advice would you have for other veterans about volunteer activities?
Well, I really enjoy the volunteering, and if there are any veterans out there who think they might want to do it, as you know, Steve, it's a great honor to do, and it's a privilege and fun. Please, any veterans out there who want to volunteer, please attempt that and have a good time at it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today on A Veteran's Voice. It's been a real thrill meeting you.
It's been an honor and a privilege to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the show tonight. We hope you found the stories of military families to be inspiring. We leave you with some resources for the families of those who serve. Military OneSource provides a wide range of help for military family members. You can find them at militaryonesource.mil or by calling 800-342-9647. Vet centers are a great place to find resources for the families of those who serve. Find a vet center near you at va.gov or call 800-698-2411. Veterans Voices is brought to you in part by contributions from the Veterans Affordable Home Program, serving those who have served us, ensuring the American dream for our veterans. The Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation, dedicated to helping veterans near you. American Legion Post 246, honoring the tradition of the American Legion in Danville. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa, so be sure to subscribe. Our next show will air on Monday, July 12th at 7 p.m. We will talk with the families of veterans. Be sure to tune in. To all our veterans and their families, thanks for watching and have a great evening.